right. Jendra Jarnagin, welcome to the craft.
Hi, Alex. Hi, Wami. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Jendra,
Yes.
welcome.
Yeah, we noticed a lot of your TV work lately, music videos, beauty. So we're just interested to kind of peek behind the curtain and see how you do what you do.
Cool. Where do you want to start?
Let's start from the beginning, right? You
Yeah.
you started as an electrician and a grip. Is that true?
Well, really started like middle school and high school doing like, extracurricular video production programs. And then went to NYU Film School undergrad. And when I graduated, it was before digital. So everything was shot on film and you didn't really get a copy of what you had shot. So you didn't come out of school with a strong enough reel to actually be competitive to get hired as a DP. So you had to work for, a really long time to get a body of work to have a reel back in those days. So the electrician route was, a means to an end in terms of supporting myself as a DP. Like it wouldn't be accurate to say I started as an electrician. It was more like, oh, I'm out of film school. How am I going to make a living? And so, I was gaffing for other people and then, doing really small stuff and not really learning anything more than I already knew. And then I was like, let me go be you know, a smaller fish in a bigger pond where I'm exposed to things I haven't done yet. So I like went and pursued becoming an electrician versus a gaffer on bigger things, so I could learn more. All in the service of learning, more and strengthening my tool set for my DP work.
Excellent. Yeah, I came up the lighting and grip route as well. So I think of it very fondly and lots of lessons learned that I can then steal tricks from other more experienced people like Juan Miguel and take into my own work.
Well, what? Why electrician and not a camera?
I found being an AC pretty rigid. Like this is the job. You have a very specific job to do, lots of responsibilities, and you're not really trying new things all the time. So I found, what inspires me about good cinematography is the lighting. And like the lighting is different every time. Every crew is different. Every crew dynamic is different. Every gaffer I would get to learn from was different. Every DP I would get to learn from, every director, every location, every equipment package. It was just, it felt much more expansive to me in terms of what there was to be, continually exposed to new things. So, and I was never a great focus puller either. So I think it just felt more creative and I like the team aspect too, the teamwork collaboration of the lighting department versus the camera department is very small and in a way more rigid in its hierarchy in terms of, I mean, not that the lighting department's not, but you have a lot of electricians on a bigger set versus just, two ACs. So it just appealed to me more and inspired me more in terms of lighting and learning more about lighting and I think developing, the craft of lighting and style of lighting through understanding it on a more hands-on level.
Mm. When did it get to the point where you could kind of say goodbye to the lighting electrician portion and be like full-time DP?
I ended up joining Local 52 IATSE, as a union electrician, which I worked for a few years. And then I was finally making enough money that I could take shorts more frequently, like freebie shorts as a DP. So I in a way, working on a higher level as an electrician allowed me or empowered me financially to do more DP work. It just required a lot of discipline to stay in the game with the keeping the DP stuff going. And I had some friends at the time who warned me, like, be careful, the money is a drug. Like, don't get used to this, earnings of the union laborer, in my 20s. So I remember I got to a point where I was working more and more as a DP and less as an electrician. And it had been at least a year of DP work where I wasn't working for free anymore, like that I was landing paid jobs consistently. And, the way that it works, in the union is that you only get your health insurance by qualifying of working a certain amount in like a, 6 month period or so I got to the point where I was doing so little electrician work that I wasn't even going to qualify for my health insurance anymore. So that was I was starting to wonder, oh, is it time to let this go? And that happened simultaneously to me being at a stage in my career with short films and either student films or films that were, fed by recent, graduating students where I was every job that I interviewed for, I was getting. Like I was landing every single one. And I was like, if that's happening, then you're not aiming high enough. Like if you're then you're playing it too small. So I was like, how do I get a feature film? How do I break into commercials? How do I get, better music videos, etc. If the sort of cycle that I'm in that's like feeding more word of mouth, sort of has a lid on it. And I was like, well, I need to network. I need to meet people. I need to find the people that are out there. I need to, promote my website or like at the time it was, we had our reels on VHS and you'd like mail them, find out about job app openings and like mail a VHS to people or mail a DVD to people. And I was like, how do I move my career forward? There's more to your career than just the jobs that come your way. Like I want to actually have some intentionality about charting my path. And I was like, well, I can't do that if I don't have any time to spend on it. If I'm going to take all of my free time, because I was established enough as an electrician at that point, like working as a, sort of regular day player on a few TV shows, like Sex and the City had just ended, and Law and Order. It was like I could just call those team up and say, oh, I'm available, and they would throw me some days, and I was like, you know what, I need to carve out some free time in my schedule in order to work on, career development and business development. And, I don't have any free time if I just keep filling all of my time with electric work. So it's time to let that go. So that was behind the decision of, taking the leap of releasing the side job and saying like, okay, it's time to focus on moving my career to the next level.
Did you, when you started shooting, did you start shooting film, or it was already the digital era?
Yeah, no, it was already film. Even when I graduated, digital, didn't exist. I mean, we had like digibeta in school, but it wasn't digital cinema. So the quality of video at that point was such that it wasn't being used for filmmaking and even independent filmmaking, or if it was so amateur or low budget that like I was already not taking it seriously to be like, oh, well, if they're willing to shoot on digital, then they don't care enough about the image to, for me to even want to spend my time on something like that. So that's kind of where I was at by the time that, did the sort of start of, or when I got out of school was all shooting on film.
But I heard you say somewhere that you were one of the first using the Viper camera. So
Yes.
you were very early in the game, on the digital game.
Yes. So I was very early in the digital cinema proper, like when things actually were not just co-opted broadcast cameras being used for, independent low budget filmmaking, but like we're actually starting to get real cameras. So what I just said to you guys about, if you're shooting digital, then or sort of the attitude that I had at the time, like if you're shooting digital, then it wasn't even digital, it was video. If you're shooting video, then then you don't care enough about your image for me to care about your project, where I was at that point in my career. I said those words to Ted Schilowitz from Red Digital Cinema at a condo party before Red was public. So I basically met Ted. I was in the right place at the right time and said the right things to pique his interest, that he started asking me about, well, if there were, like, theoretically, like, if there were a digital camera, or like a digital camera of the future, like, what would it need to be before you would take it seriously and as a professional tool, and like what attributes and whatever. And, and so I named all the things. And at the time I was very into CML, the cinematography mailing list, back before we had, Facebook groups and whatever. Like, that was the main way that, people connected online around cinematography. And so I was kind of up on all of the new developments on things. And so I was very informed and was talking to Ted. And I didn't realize in the conversation he was basically, testing me once I seemed to be a person of interest to him. And then by the end of the conversation, he said, come with me. I've got a gift for you. And it was a Red Digital Cinema t-shirt before the logo was even designed. It just said the words on it. And he invited me to work at their trade show booth at NAB. So this was 2006 at Sundance. So 2006 NAB, the first, Red booth, which, famously was like, the camera didn't even exist yet. We were just, selling people on a concept. I was the resident DP at that booth. So being in sort of at the ground floor, I was the person that all of the experts and whatever were coming to ask, oh, what is this thing? How's it going to work? How's it different from the Genesis? And so I fell into this role as as a digital cinema expert, as almost like a digital cinema pioneer. So that was leveling up, just as an indie DP, I guess, how old was I back then? Maybe like my early 30s or so. I'd have to do the math. That just where I was at in my career, I was getting a lot of attention, from bigger players and whatnot for my digital cinema knowledge, expertise, and connections. So I was like, all right, here's my, entree into, getting my career to the next level. So I embraced that and went with that. Like, okay, I'm the digital person now. So I was learning about all the cameras and wanting to use them all and test them all. And, I wasn't, I had been employed by Red for that purpose of that trade show, but I wasn't, a Red employee. I was an independent contractor. And I've always been a format agnostic, kind of person in terms of the right tool for the job. And I've always been, curious about learning about, technology in the service of art, like not technology just for technology's sake. So yeah, I kind of like went with that for a little while, and like used all the new cameras that are, pretty much obsolete now. So for our audience who doesn't know what the Viper camera is, it was, pretty much considered the first true, digital cinema camera that it was co-opted, like built on a broadcast video model, but that it shot raw and it shot data. So you were able to get more, more dynamic range, less compression, all these things before, the Red camera made it to market. But it was through the door of Red. Actually, it was simultaneous. That Viper was at Sundance that year, and so I also met the Viper people and fostered a relationship with them. But then their camera was actually available before the Red camera was, and so I used that on a project, and very few people understood it or knew how to use it at the time. And by the time it took off, or by the time the project shot with it were coming to cinemas, like The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, etc., other cameras such as the Red were becoming more appealing, more accessible, etc. So Viper was a bit of a ahead of its time flash in the pan, but definitely an important camera on the early road to digital cinema.
Once you got a bite of that digital apple, did you ever go back to film? Are you still format agnostic, or you've kind of be like, hey, this is the wave of the future?
I don't care about the wave of the future, but I do care about benefits, and I love the look of film. Certainly back then, even with the early red, like I still felt like film had a lot of advantages. The gap had definitely closed and closed a lot, but the digital, really had become a viable professional option with the the cost and the convenience and the being able to see what you're shooting, etc., like benefits over film, but that film still had its benefits. And so I shot film a few years ago for a music video, and I was really, really excited. It was Super 16. It's on my website. It's called Terminus, directed by Ian Marks, who's a writer for American Cinematographer magazine, and has interviewed me for the magazine, but also for their podcast. So he was directing, and we shot on Super 16, and I was so excited. I had not shot film in so long, and then like as I was shooting it, I was like, "This is a pain in the ass." Like I was romanticizing the idea of it and my excitement for it, and then like the actual process of shifting to that way of working after, getting used to the benefits and conveniences of digital. I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know that I would prefer this. I certainly would be open to it. Like if I were, if I had a project that hadn't pre-decided what the format was going to be, which so often has happened already by the time, you choose a DP. I would definitely, consider film if I believed that film was the right aesthetic and practical choice. But I'm also very pragmatic, and so like certain things I think don't make sense to shoot on film. Like I wouldn't, want to shoot a project, that was mostly involving children or something like on film, or I wouldn't want to shoot underwater anymore on film. I also shoot underwater. I wouldn't want to shoot, really low light level, really like a movie that all takes place in the dark or something. If you want to really, I feel like you can be more bold in digital with, your shadow detail and like how dark you're willing to go, when you can have the confidence of seeing like, okay, that you can still make that out, versus when you can't see it, you need to play it a little more safe to make sure that you actually have an image.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're not going to get fired when, the dailies come back. The other pragmatic thing now, with the closure of so many labs worldwide, that you don't get your dailies for a couple of days. And it's sort of like that feedback loop of like, how is this working? Is this, am I giving the director what they want, or the studio approve what we're doing? Or even like, is how I'm working with my gaffer, like working for my approval and taste, not just, pleasing your bosses, but pleasing yourself, So yeah, it basically, now I feel like it has trade-offs, and it's sort of like, it is the benefit of shooting film, worth it. And I'm saying all this because I don't want to talk myself out of a film job. Like I don't want someone to hear this and be like, oh, well, I'm never calling her to shoot on film, kind of thing. Like I like any other format, with its strengths and weaknesses, I would completely embrace shooting film and be excited about it for the right project that's a good fit for.
It seems more and more difficult to differentiate between a movie shot in film and a movie shot in digital. Mm-hmm. With the level of DIs that we have now, the amount of stuff that we can do, it's mm-hmm. getting really, really complicated to differentiate between one or the other. So,
right.
So you are, watching your reel, watching your website, you are one of the DPs that I know who covers a wider spectrum. You do beauty commercials, normal commercials, you do music videos, you do short films, you do feature films, you do television. You basically do everything in on the cinematography world. Uh, where does your heart land? Is it you like everything and you that's why you try to do everything, or is there a particular place where you feel more at home than the others?
My heart lands in storytelling, whether that's a feature film or whether that's a series. Certainly, in the last bunch of years, I don't even mean the immediate years, like since COVID in our industry has changed so much. I mean, even before that, like that, films have things have moved more towards television than film. There's less and less films being made and more series being made, and a lot of the professionals and quality people are working more in television, and just because there's less opportunity in film now, you've got your giant blockbusters, and then you've got your first time filmmaker risk taking indie films, and like nothing in between. So the in between ground has become television, and so I like television. I want to keep working in television. There's a lot of benefits to working in television. But if it weren't because of all of the business side of things, then and there were just as many movies at mid-budget levels and great stories and whatever, like there used to be in movies, then I would probably favor movies over TV. But it just seems like it's so hard to find uh you know mid-range movies anymore, and I've been shooting for over 30 years. I'm kind of over doing things that are so under-resourced that it's an uphill battle to do a good job. It just is. Before I had my big break in TV, I shot so many indies that never went anywhere, and that didn't, either people never got to see them, or they, didn't, they weren't the kind of movies that broke through, or, you know, had good word of, no, basically no one had heard of them. So you like look at my older IMDb, if you go back, and it's like, I've never heard of any of these things. And that just kept my career at a certain, cap, until having, things that people had actually heard of. So, but yeah, my heart is in storytelling and movies and TV. I love shooting music videos for the, um, you know, reins off, no rules, like just creativity for creativity's sake. It doesn't need to make sense. You can be you can take a ton of risks. You can be incredibly bold. Like as long as it looks cool, you can't fuck it up. Like that freedom, like who cares about continuity? I don't even care how low the budgets are in music videos. I feel like you can write or a concept for a music video that's cool, interesting, and visual and worth my while, that excites me, for any budget level. Like you, and no one will know when they saw the finished product that you had no money. Like, it's a really hard task to try and pull off a short film, and do it well, if you have too little money. But if you're like, okay, this is the money we have, we're gonna do this music video. I'm gonna shoot it on my, camera that I have, and we're gonna put all of our money into a makeup artist, or we're gonna put all of our money into an amazing location, or we're gonna get a choreographer and have dancer. You can pick like one or two production value things to focus on, and it's like, nobody cares that you shot it on a old camera or a cheap camera or whatever, if what you're putting in front of the lens is like interesting and and exciting. So yeah, I love music videos. Anyone who I've scared out of hiring me to shoot film, or your budget for your movies are too low. I don't care how low your budget. I don't care how low your music videos are. Call me up and be like, oh, she wouldn't do our tiny little project. She's done Emily in Paris or whatever. And it's like, if I'm available and it lights me up creatively, like music videos, I'm there for it.
Love it. Is there speaking of, you were talking about that kind of point, getting to a point in your career where it kind of like opened up now that you had enough stuff. Is there kind of one project that you would classify as that like ceiling breaker, or that like the moment where it's like, okay, now the doors have opened?
Yeah, it's been a two-step process of that, which the first was my first TV show, East New York, which I was trying to get a TV show, like actively trying, focused on trying for like, at least 8 years. And for four or five of those years, I was interviewing a lot. I was making it to the final 2 or 3 candidates for like some pretty serious shows that would have been my first show, and just kept getting really close over and over again. And then I finally got East New York, which was a season 1 CBS show. And did the whole run, alternating with Zeus Morand. I think a 21 episode show. I did 10 of them, and that was a fantastic experience. And it's like, okay, now you've shot a TV show. So now all of that, like, oh, we're interested in you, but like, have you shot a TV show? Now you've shot a TV show. And then the next TV show that I booked was Emily in Paris. So that was another, like, way more people have heard of Emily in Paris than have heard of East New York. Like, East New York, happened during peak TV when there was so much on that you couldn't even keep track of, or haven't even necessarily heard of all of the shows. And it was very good. It had very good ratings and very critically acclaimed, and I was very proud of my work on the show, but also very proud of the show as a show. But it only lasted 1 season, so a lot of people have never heard of that. Like, nearly everybody has heard of Emily in Paris. So that it's interesting that now that I have this very well-known international impressive credit is like coinciding with the industry grinding to a screeching halt. And when I would expect that I would have all these doors opening, there are no doors. So it's like all the doors dissolved and disappeared. So it's ironic, the timing, kind of this dichotomy of like, everything you've been working towards, of like having, the door opener credit or the big break. And now that I've had it, there's nearly nothing out there to actually, do with it. So, so I'm looking and hoping for my next TV job, and also, looking and happy to do, movies in the meantime.
Isn't that the case for all of us? Like, oh, we love what you do, but you haven't shot TV, so we can hire you because you haven't shot TV, but we love what you do, but you haven't shot TV. But it's just like it's a catch-22. Anyways, you went from shooting commercials and music videos and TV, and movies and short films, where you are the gatekeeper of the look of the thing, and now you go to a TV show when you have to, especially on East New York, you share that with with another DP. Basically, you shot the entire thing between you and somebody else, right?
Yes.
More or less.
And neither of us shot the pilot.
And neither you shot the pilot. Okay.
Yeah. So the pilot, DP Cliff Charles, was not available for the series.
Okay.
So the look had been established by the pilot, and then you have two DPs. You want me to run with that, or did you have a specific?
My specific question about it is, it feels, and I don't know because I never shot a TV show, but it's 2 DPs that are constantly in the show, and directors that come and go.
Yes.
Do you guys become like the gatekeepers of the look of the show? Like you have to handle the directors in a way like, no, you can't do that because that doesn't belong to this show, or how does it work, or at least how did it work for you in that show?
A little bit, yes. So the directors who are the guest leaders coming in definitely, and this is true of all TV series. I'll speak generally as well as specific to my experience, but the directors are relying on the DPs as the consistent person here to help them guide, like how are things done around here, what is the visual language, how much freedom do we have to do we have to stick to the visual language, or do we have freedom within it, how much freedom, etc. And that is really decided by either the showrunner or the producing director, depending on whether the showrunner is a visual and production, physical production oriented person. Very often they're not. They're just a writer, creative producer, and that they would therefore have another EP called the producing director, who is a director who often directs the pilot, and they will basically shepherd any incoming directors in terms of here's what you need to know, here's how we do things, here's what we need from you, etc. So it's up to them how much they want the DPs to speak up about sort of guiding a director versus how much they want the director to bring in fresh ideas. So which normally we do, like we want the director to have fresh ideas. Like that's part of what keeps the show interesting. That's part of why those particular directors were chosen for a very competitive job to land for any of these shows. And so we're looking to them for visual ideas, especially about blocking and also shot selection, and so they do ask us and ask the producing director, like sort of like what how strict or how open is our toolbox of like your visual language and whatnot. And in TV, a lot of that has to do with schedule. Like what can you fit into this day? Like if someone wants to do a lot of complicated, wants to do a big 360s or things with a lot of rigs, or basically things that are time consuming, then they need to a director then they need to make a case for that, as well as balance, like, okay, we're going to spend a lot of time on this scene and we're going to make up for it by being very simple and efficient with this other scene that can handle that kind of treatment, whereas it's worth it to do this sort of complex thing over here. And certainly we talk to the directors during prep to flesh out those ideas and help guide that, but we don't want to tell the directors like, no, you can't do that, for example. But East New York was interesting because it was still a season 1 show, so finding basically like, okay, here's the pilot, that was how that particular story for that episode was done. We cannot make a wild departure from establishing the same show, but sort of like, where do we want to go from here? So like that was the big question that myself and the other DP tackled together. And very often with the alternating DP show, there's like a hierarchy between the DPs where like one's a lead DP and one's a second hire, or if in my case, being my first TV show, I was always expecting that I would be hired with a veteran DP that would basically be like, oh, let me show you the ropes and, you know, have your back and sort of coach you through your first show kind of thing. In this case, being that neither of us shot the pilot, neither of us were the lead DP, and both of us, it was our first TV show. Wow. So it was very egalitarian, and it was designed that way. And also Zeus Moran, my co-DP on that show, had also come from a beauty background. So it was interesting, and the, you know, Mike Robin, the producing director who hired us, knew exactly what he was doing. Picked 2 beauty DPs to shoot a cop show. That's what he wanted. He wanted like a more, you know, elevated, polished, you know, flattering cop show instead of a gritty cop show, but within the realism, and not like a ultra polished, like Emily in Paris is ultra polished. Emily in Paris is a fantasy. Emily in Paris is, you know, beauty to the point of artifice, you know, where everything, you know, is sparkly and everything is idealized and whatever. Whereas East New York was like, everyone looks good, but it's within a naturalism and a realism, you know, kind of, I don't want to say lens, you know, because I don't mean lens literally, but all that to say, Zeus and I were very compatible in terms of our taste and our preferences, and then we were also really compatible as partners, just in terms of like communication and collaboration, and you know, that was a great partnership. But there was a lot more freedom there in a season 1 show than there was me joining season 4 of Emily in Paris. That was a lot harder, I have to say. And I think it would be harder for any DP to, you know, walk into an existing paradigm of like, your job is to fit in and to deliver what you think they want from you. And so that has a lot of layers of like, am I nailing the look, but also am I pleasing them? Am I interpreting what I think they want, and then correctly, and then am I delivering on what I think, you know, they want? And all of those filters add a lot, like there's a lot more freedom, I should say. Let me approach this from the other direction. There's a lot more freedom when you're free from those thoughts and concerns, where you're like, whether that's a movie or whether that's a pilot or a season 1 show, where you are empowered, like they hired you to do what you do. They trust you to make the choices and, you know, go with your gut or your style or your taste or your preferences without running it through all the filters of what has come before and being new to an established thing. It's a lot harder.
Yeah, and actually that's true always. Like when they hire you, they know who they're hiring, whether it's a movie or a TV show. So if you do your thing, you're doing the right thing in principle. Yeah. So
yes,
you know that I watched what your work in a not linear order. So I watched some of your beauty commercials, and then I watched Emily in Paris. And I was like, yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah, of course. And then I went backwards and I watched East New York. And I was like, whoa, hold on. What's going on here? And then I went backwards and I watched sorry, I got to look at this. Ask for it.
Asking for it.
Asking for it. And I was like, whoa, this is not the person I thought I was watching, which is great in my opinion. But then thinking about it, it's true that the way that East New York is lit, it has a lot in common with your work, because especially on the faces are always like perfectly lit, like perfectly, meaning that shadows, they never come from the top, and there's like it's like a beautiful classicism in it, and when you see your entire career, it all makes sense. But at the beginning was like, whoa, a cop shop now? What's going on here?
Coming from, so I mean, you'd worked on TV shows before, you're doing the beauty. Was there anything that you had to adapt to the way you worked when you got East New York in that first show, specifically when it comes to speed and schedule?
I was about to say before you even said it, the main
Yeah.
thing is speed.
Yeah.
The main thing is speed. All of your choices are based around speed. So, um, in a way, it affects the aesthetic. So, it the priority on East New York, we had like 7.5 days per episode, which is not a lot. Like the norm is 8, and then for more prestige shows get maybe 10. Even within the network model, when you're streaming, you get more than that for very good reason. But um, they their attitude towards the look and how good a job that I was doing was, do what you can, do the best you can within this schedule. Like the schedule is first. Like I never got to design anything that was more beautiful or more, involved than would fit the schedule. Like I didn't get to make a case. Like on a movie, I get to make a case with the director, and it's with the AD, and it's in collaboration with the director of like, here's how we want to allocate our time. Like this, today is a production value day, and today's a page count day, and this scene is the way we want to shoot it is going to be time consuming for X, Y, and like that. There's space to weigh in on the prioritization of time as a resource, and you do not get that in TV. It's like the schedule is based on the locations, the guest stars, like it's like you have, and of course the budget and their willingness to do overtime or not every once in a while, of like, if the AD knows like, okay, this is going to be a heavy day and there's no way around it. Today's going to be an OT day. And then they talk to the producer about it, like, etc. But it's not up to me. We had 2 cameras full time, and like whether we would bring in a 3rd camera was always a scheduling decision. It was not a creative decision. And it was basically like justifying the cost of the 3rd camera to, buy enough efficiency in time, was very often a production decision, not an aesthetic one. So, yeah, that was it wasn't a surprise, to me. Like I had done many indies that were very low budget, like so low budget that time is a resource, time is money. And so I had to be fast in indie films, like just to get everything done. But I had more influence in how the time was spent. And now on TV, it's not low budget and I have plenty of resources, but the time is the priority. So if it's like, okay, your crew size is this and you have this much time to shoot this, then you ask for more stuff. You ask for more people, you ask for more lights, you ask for more rigging, relying on rigging crews, like you make the case for what you need to accomplish what is being asked for you within the time, as opposed to a low budget indie where you don't have things you can ask for. It's sort of like, how do I make this whole equation of, time, resources, budget fit,
And where do you feel more comfortable? In the less money, less equipment, but more freedom and more weight on the decisions, or I get anything I want, but I don't get to decide?
That's a great question. And I wouldn't say I get anything that I want. I still need to.
Well, yeah. Nobody gets everything they want.
And if I'm not getting to decide, it's not even what I want. It's more them, trusting me to tell them what is necessary to pull off, either whether it's as written or how the director wants to do it. So I'm more comfortable with the bigger budget. I'm more comfortable with the more resources. I feel like I can do a better job more consistently, that I'm, find more rewarding when I have experienced professional crews that are, because indie films with their horrible budgets and their, crappy pay means you're very often working with, entry level people on the crew side, and that really holds you back in what you can accomplish, and therefore and what they can accomplish overall, but what they can accomplish in a certain period of time, what they can accomplish safely. So that whole, I'm used to it. I've done a lot of it. I'm accustomed to managing that, and doing my best to thrive within that. I don't want to say that I don't ever want to do indie films again, but in terms of what's more comfortable, it's more comfortable to have the resources, to have the, you know, the quality of crew, the size of crew, the right tools, the flexibility of bringing in more tools for something that you want to do. I
Mm.
think can make for better work. And ideally, now that I've done a couple TV shows, like the goal is to get to do either more TV shows or a studio film where you can have both, where you do get to make the decisions, where you are involved, where you do have more freedom, but then you all to have the freedom, the creative freedom, and the resources together is the goal.
Nice. On either East New York or Emily in Paris, has there ever been a situation, it's just top of my head, situation where a visiting director has had an idea in the moment, maybe that wasn't prepped out, where you've had to somebody's had to hold them back and be like, I'd love to do that, but
Um, More so in East New York because
yeah.
of the schedule factor. So, um, you don't want to hold a director back from being inspired and having fresh ideas and in the moment ideas. Like we want to, if we think that the idea is a good idea, or maybe we don't quite understand it yet, but we want to, empower the director. Like we'll bend over backwards to, pivot and go for it with the fresh idea in the moment. That and having enough resources and enough crew makes pivoting a lot easier, because you can pull something together quickly when you have professional people who work together all the time as a well-oiled machine. Be like, all right, hold off, guys, change of plans. We're gonna do this instead. And I'm like, okay, and then everyone's doing it. So yes, sometimes it would happen that inspiration strikes. Let's do something we hadn't planned, um, but also that sometimes inspiration strikes and you're like, this doesn't fit in.
Mm.
Like we can't absorb that. Like we don't have, and in that case, it's not. I don't want to be the bad guy. Like I don't want to be the naysayer, and I don't want to make enemies. Not even enemies. Like I don't want the director to feel like I don't have their back. So in that case, it's more of a AD and production manager thing. If they were to come up with something that I know, you know, basically being far enough along into the season of not Emily in Paris, of East New York, and establishing trust and knowing how things work around there, to basically be like, if I know this is not in the show's best interest for whatever, making the day or the trickle down effects or the impact or whatever, then I will say why, you know, try to talk them out of it from a why standpoint. And then if that, I'm talking theoretically now, like
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have any examples where this actually happened, but then if it went further, then I would talk to the AD and the line producer about it. Because if it's not up, like I said, it's not up to me to say no, but it is up to me to make choices, and guide the director's choices to fit the schedule on a TV show. If they want to do something that's going to throw the schedule off, that's okay with me. as long as it's okay with the AD and the producer. Like if they'll approve it, if they'll say, "Hey, we got this great idea. We want to do this now. That is going to cause this impact on our day." I could instead of trying to, talk the director out of it, I could go try and talk the AD and the producer into it to be like, "Oh, this is going to be." Sorry, there's a big siren coming by.
Oh, you're good.
Like, "Oh, here's this great idea. Here's what it's gonna do to our day. I think it's worth it. We can pull it off. We just need, an extra 45 minutes, or we just need, someone to call Monster Remotes and get something here by 2 p.m. or like, maybe they'll say yes."
Yeah, I'm just
I
curious.
want to be a naysayer.
We had another guest that talked about shooting a location on a show and trying to shoot it in a different way than had been shot before, like ultra wide, and then the dailies coming back and somebody being like, "Listen, that's not our show. Don't do that." So I'm just curious, like on shows with tight schedules, like are chances taken? Do sometimes things like, "Whoops, not doing that again," or like sometimes you take a chance. It's like, "That was amazing. Do that more often."
If you're taking a chance, you probably need, unless, like if it's a spontaneous chance that hasn't been discussed or run by the showrunner or directing producer, then as long as you have a safety net, like you can't like a director can't just come in and do a long scene as a oneer with no cuts without running that by the producers, because then like timing wise with TV and commercial breaks and you're giving them no choices. You're like locking them in to something like, so you need certain kinds of things you need approval for. Other kinds of things you can be like, "Hey, let's try something wacky and bold and exciting. And like, if it doesn't work, we still have coverage of that, or the scene still works without it, kind of thing." Those kinds of things, you want to leave space for, all the time. But in that example, I would say if you shot an establishing show in a completely different way, like for example, my husband's a DP, so we talk about this all the time. And so he shoots a TV show, Elsbeth, and he used to shoot The Good Fight. And I don't remember when this came up in our conversation or which show it was, but it was basically like some director came in and wanted to do handheld. And it's like that show had never done handheld and doesn't do handheld. And it was basically like Alec thought it was a good idea. So it was like, okay, we better run that by so-and-so. Like you like to just show up and do handheld would be like, well, that's not our show unless this is why, here's what I'm thinking. And then and sell them on it. And they'll be like, "Oh yeah, sure. That's a great idea." Or no,
Yeah. Get it vetted. Yeah, get it checked.
Yeah.
And after the
part of if I can just jump in, because I think this is interesting to people, part of the political savvy of our jobs is knowing how to navigate all of that. Like when to let a director know, "Hey, that's outside of our normal milieu. You better, not you better, but that sounds threatening, but you would be advised to get, approval for a choice like that. Like that's outside of our wheelhouse, our normal wheelhouse. Like how to judge that, how to communicate that, how to,
that's a big part of our job anyways. I mean, just being able to communicate and have some political savviness, and I mean it's just part of our job.
A big part.
Yeah. So after those two TV shows, you went back to shooting a movie, and you shot the movie with a Canon C500, which is not a normal camera for or it's not the standard camera for your usual movie. So I'm very, very, very curious about why you chose that camera.
Well, first of all, I actually shot, it's now called Nocturne, prior to Emily in Paris. I was on, it just hasn't been released yet. So I was on the set of Nocturne when I got the call that I was being offered offered the job. It was funny because it was we had a SAG interim agreement, so we were shooting during the strike with permission and approval, and while we were shooting, we got the news that the strike was over. Like, yay, the strike's over. And I made a joke like, oh yay, tomorrow we're all gonna get job offers. And tomorrow I did. I got, because I had been interviewing for things that were on pause until they had start dates by the strike. So that was pretty funny. So but you were asking about the C500.
Which is, by the way, in a movie called Nix, right?
It had been called Nix when we filmed it, and then the title is changed to Nocturne, like Nocturne, but with an X instead of a C. And so that's finishing up post right now, and hoping to do the festival circuit soon. The idea to shoot on C500 was presented to me by Able. Like we had relationships and connections in Able Cine, and we approached them and was like, this is a incredibly low budget passion project, and what we're sort of flexible and open about equipment, like what would be what would be of interest to you from like a PR standpoint or whatnot, in terms of like you being able to support this project and us, getting the best, price break and, value for the money. And they brought up the C500. They said that they thought it was really underutilized on narrative feature filmmaking, and that it had a lot of benefits, and so they encouraged me to test it. So I tested it alongside the Alexa LF, and I knew that I wanted to shoot large format sensor because we were going to be doing a lot with really wide lenses. It's kind of it's a drama, a thriller drama, but visual style has a lot of sort of horror elements to it. And the writer, director, actor Christina Klebe is very well known in the horror space. And she's just has a big horror background, and her sort of aesthetic and familiarity has a lot of horror DNA to it. So I wanted to shoot large format to have like, really wide, extra wide lenses and wide lenses close up. So what we could afford was either a large LF, like not a mini LF. We couldn't afford a mini LF, or the C500 being presented to us as an exciting and affordable option. So I tested it, and I was really impressed with the flexible ISO situation that it has. Like unlike a Sony or like a dual ISO camera that's like 800 and 2500. This, you can set the ISO 3200, 6400, like whatever you set it to, the internal computing pathway towards it is basically making that ISO be a native ISO. Not that you don't have any noise like you don't with the FX3 or whatnot at 12,800, like literally has no noise. It's not that you do have noise, but you can shoot very, very low light. And I liked the colors. I liked the size and the form factor, because we were shooting some stuff in some tight spaces and some stuff in cars, and we were shooting some stuff. I had been scouting with the director that we were shooting in a townhouse in Manhattan that we had access to, and there was an amazing available light at night in the second floor facing the street. The way that the street lights came in, the way that cars drove by, like organically with just like tail lights, and it looked amazing, but it was also like really like stylistically appropriate to like what we wanted to do with the look of the movie. So it's like I don't have the resources, to have condors and even like scaffolding with lights on the street through every window. Like I want to utilize this available light situation. So the C500, which really hadn't been on my radar for purposes like that until, Abel started talking to me about it. Seemed like a good choice for those, kinds of reasons.
What with an available light situation like that at night, what kind of ISO were you shooting at?
I think I was shooting at 3200.
Oh, nice.
And
What lenses did you pair with it?
The Tribe 7s. I got a set. I had never used the Tribe 7s. I'd always been interested in them, but I found them very confusing in terms of like the S tuning and the T tuning and the X tuning, and I had never had the lead time to like do the testing to educate myself about which ones, and I did on this project. So and they had the right range of focal lengths and speed, as well as like I wanted a certain funkiness, to the look. So I tested, all the different series and educated myself about them. And then there's a B series or B tuning, which is lesser known. And there's actually some confusion if you read about them. Some people call them binaries, and binaries are different than the B. And then some people call them bespoke, meaning that they're all custom made, which at first they were the B delineated some lenses made by people that were bespoke, but then there was like a popular for good reason combination of factors that people were wanting that became the B tune. So the B tune is now a known quantity thing. And I would have to go back and look at my notes. I don't want to misquote it, but I think it's the coatings of maybe the S, which are the standard ones. So they have, good flare coatings and for higher contrast, but then it has the sort of imaging characteristics in terms of like the, vintage style aberrations and whatnot of the T's. So it's like you get the, which I can remember now that they do a thing where they don't paint the inside of the lens black so that light bounces around on the inside, that therefore does a reduced contrast look, which is something that I favor in a lens. So I didn't want it to be, high contrast, but I thought that the flares were too out of control and like the X tuning of the lens. So basically it's like if you take these aspects of this lens and this aspect of these lens and combine them, you get the B tuned. And so that's what we shot.
Do you normally tend to choose softer lenses then?
Yes. My favored lenses are softer lenses. Yes.
Which one, by the way? What's your dream lens? That the one that you will carry to a desert island?
Much like my camera attitude of being format agnostic and being like the right tool for the job. I want to think about lenses separate project to project. But if you're like, you have to use one set of lenses for the rest of your life, or you're shooting something tomorrow, you don't know what, you don't have time to test anything or whatever, then I go with Cooks, whether that's Cook S4s or for larger format Cook S8s. I actually own a set of S4s. I don't keep them with me. They're in rental inventory on consignment. I didn't buy them for me to use them. I bought them for, passive income and investment. But and then when I joined Emily in Paris, one of my first conversations with Seamus Tierney, who was the lead DP who had been there the prior season, I was like, what lenses do we use? And he's like, actually, I was planning on revisiting which lenses that we use now that the other DP who had set the look of the show, Steven Fierberg, had moved on, and the whole I wanted to revisit the lens conversation, and he's like, I was thinking of something softer, and I was like Cooks, like he was moving the conversation towards Cooks, and I took the words right out of his mouth and completed the sentence, and he's like, oh, would you be on board with that? And I was like, 100%. Like, if you were to ask me what I thought this show should be shot on, that's what I would say. Like why are we not shooting Cooks? So we were very, very aligned in that, and we did a lens test, and compared them to the old lenses and like a couple of other things, and that's what we ended up doing. So.
Cooks S4 were my go-to lens when I was shooting film. I shot, many movies and many commercials in the Cooks S4s. And for some reason, when we started shooting digital, I didn't find those lenses reacting as good to the digital as to the as to the film. Do you do something special?
You wanted something sharper or more contrasty, or what did you not like about it?
I don't know. When I used to shoot in film with those lenses, I love the role of how they land out of focus, and I love the skin tones, and I never found that again in digital with those lenses, and in the last movie I shot, I tried them again. It's like, I want to shoot with those lenses again so bad, and I ended up choosing something else. So I don't know if it's like I just grew apart from them, or it's just my taste has changed. I don't know. They're fantastic lenses. I shot at least 100 commercials with them when in film. So I don't know what happened.
Maybe your taste has changed, or I was surprised. I also love Cook Speed Panchros, like the old ones, and the reason that I wouldn't. If I were to pick a look of any lens, my favorite, it would actually be those.
The Panchros?
The Speed Panchros. And the reason I didn't say that instead of the Cooks, as I mentioned, I'm very pragmatic, that the limited focal lengths, some of the older sets don't match, and, it's hard to get a 65, and the 18 is like, super smeary on the edges and very distorted. So the S4s have more, are more workable, lenses. But if I had to just pick the look, it would be Speed Panchros. I love the way that they look. If I could remove some of the issues with them. So I'm very familiar with that. I've shot, a few movies with them. And I saw this movie in the theater, the Beguiled, the Sofia Coppola movie. And it was, I saw it in the cinema, and it was shot on film. And I remember watching it, and the lenses looked really soft and really the aberrations of them really came through strongly in the look and the imagery of the movie, like extra funky. And I was like, what lenses are these? Like, are they some custom thing? These looks really crazy. And so I went and looked up what it was shot with. It was shot with the Speed Panchros. And I was like, that's so interesting that something that I'm very familiar with, the look of it on digital, looks so completely different on film in a way that's really magnifying its weaknesses, if you will, whereas the weaknesses are what we like about it when we pair it with digital. But like paired with film, it was like maybe a little too much for my taste. So there's definitely a big difference. And I also remember when I first I had shot a lot of red, and then started shooting Alexa, and I knew red very well and the look of red very well, and I've always really been into filters, and I like filters a lot of different kinds of diffusion filters and the subtlety between one kind and another. And so I did a filter test on an Alexa, and I would often use like very low, the minimum strengths of filters. And I went and viewed my filter test at a post house in a DI theater on a big screen. And I'm looking at the Alexa filter test, and I can't see any difference between, a soft effects and a glimmer glass and a, low con and like whatever all that I was testing in the light grades. And also with the filter test in a digital timeline, I'll like shuffle them all around. So I'll like, probably shoot like all the strengths, but then I'll like make a resolve project and put them next to each other, and with a few different timelines, and like bring that in and look at them in certain orders, next to each other. And so all the weakest strengths of filters, having shot the Alexa, I was like, I don't see a difference because I was used to seeing such a strong difference with the red. And then I educated myself about it further, and it was because of the Alexa's optical low pass filter already had like a contrast reduction in it, and like the way that it either debayered or whatever, like it just ended up with an inherently softer image than the unfiltered early red ones did, before we started getting, different OLPF options from Red and them upgrading their cameras. But so the subtleties of these very light filters were not pushing through what was already inherently in the image. You needed a stronger effect to see any differences than you did, from the red at the time. So it was very enlightening to me about like not just that film and digital look different, but like different lenses and different filters look different on different cameras, and different filters look different on different lenses, et cetera, et cetera.
Do you favor lenses over camera, or let me rephrase it? If you had to just choose one or the other, what will you favor? Like you choose one of the two, I choose the other for you. What will you let me choose for you, the lens or the camera?
Oh, I would let you choose the camera before I would let you choose the lens.
I agree absolutely.
I think most DPs would agree. I mean,
yeah.
now all the cameras, nearly all the cameras that are worth using, are also similar in their capabilities, and with everything we can do in color correction, they can all be made to look like each other.
Very very similar, very close to each other. Whereas the lens is what gives you the actual distinctive look, I think.
Yeah, character. Is there, coming up from through lighting and now working specifically on TV, fast paced on TV show, are there any certain ways that you approach things kind of like from a baseline? Like some people are like, hey, I love to prioritize tungsten units and gel those for daylight scenes, or I'm all LED all the time. Is there one side of the track that you fall on?
If I'm doing a beauty commercial, I might lean into tungsten. Like if it's all about the skin tones, then tungsten is where it's at. Like LEDs are all over the place, and it's hard, short of buying your own LEDs. Like it's hard to know what vintage, what model, what age, what like when you ask for, like people are buying LED lights now that they are proliferating, all these sort of affordable ones that are less adopted in the rental house world. So it was like when I joined East New York, and it was just like everyone was using sky panels, and it was like it was before the new Sky Panel X. And at that point, sky panels were very old LED technology in terms of their color spectrum. And I was like, we are not shining sky panels on people. Like we can use them on backdrops, we can use them as backlights, and we can use them for color sources. Like if something is supposed to be, like maybe like a really strong moonlight, but if it's supposed to be neutral, and it's supposed to be skin tones, like we're not shining them on people. And people were surprised at how dogmatic people were surprised at how dogmatic and strict I was about that, because everyone else does it. And strict I was about that because everyone else does it. Like, why do you, why does gender have and not like technically, like theoretically, but even in practice, because I know the difference. Like, I don't care that it's widely used and adopted and convenient kind of thing. So, I mean, sorry, I just went like down a big tangent about the sky panels, but big picture wise, yes, I want all the remote control lights. Like the speed of the LEDs and the dimmer boards, etc. I think it's nearly impossible to, or at least it's frustratingly inefficient to deal with tungsten lights with their where you can't just change the color temperature on a slider, and that if you want to dim them, that the color temperature changes. It's basically like everything needs to be on a TV pace. Everything needs to be remote controlled now. Like, everything changes too quickly. We're not given enough time. Like the entire working style and pace and expectations around that have changed to adapt to that way of working now. That it's, the ADs and whatnot may not understand the what is that exactly going into why they expect what they expect, but they expect what they expect, that you can get all your lighting done. Like I can watch a rehearsal and be at the DIT and whispering to my gaffer, like changing while I see that the actor is actually facing over here, that they need or this person shadowing this person, that they can and adjust a light level in a way that is absorbed into the process without me saying, I need more time to change and fix things. Basically, like, I need another rehearsal, or I need some time to adjust, or I need to fix something. Like, that can all happen imperceptibly and invisibly in real time while other things are happening that need to happen anyway without me taking the time. So there's also the optics of like the time that you look like you're slowing things down versus like you're ready because you got all that worked out, on the fly. If you can't do it on the fly, then that's, be such a waste of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't want to go back to.
No, that's fine. I just had one follow up real quick, Wanmi.
Yeah.
If you're removing, just to harp on that other point, you remove sky panels from skin. What do you replace in favor in that situation?
Vortex.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah.
In terms of like a Vortex, I think it's a Vortex 8 is like the same form factor as a, sky panel, S60 or something. So like as a workhorse light that people are used to, kind of thing, the Vortex has a better color spectrum, but is also, I know they're really heavy. That's because they're also water resistant, etc. But now that there's new sky panels, I don't want to be hating on sky panels.
But there's also new Vortex. You got the 24 now.
Sure, now you get a big one, because that was the other thing. Even though it was like no sky panels on bases, there at the time there was no good replacement for a 360. Like the size of the so we would use that sometimes. I would basically like ask Roscoe, I'm like, hey, can we get a maxi mix, over here? And but now that there's the giant Vortex, that solves all of my, there was no equivalent replacement to a Sky Panel 360, so I still have to use one sometimes. From a practical, can't argue with, and it looks great. The quality of the light is great.
It's a very good light. Vortex is very, very flexible and very good. I have mixed feelings with this point where we are at now, where everything is controlled on a freaking iPad or on a board, and everything goes super fast, and because the expectations that we generate in everybody, as you said, is that everything is going to happen like this, and not always it needs to happen like this. That's the only thing I miss, and especially in movies. I make movies, not TV shows. It's like I almost wishing to shoot a movie in film and in tungsten just to have the time to think. Just for that. Not there's no other reason. Just put a camera there. I'm the only one watching. Everything is tungsten. I got dinos on the cranes. I got Fresnel lights, and that will give me the time to think. Because the technology that we have now, where everything is in a computer, it's too fast. I mean, we're used to it. We work like that because we have to, but it's just I miss that moment of, okay, just put the Fresnel there, just cable it, and meanwhile, I can think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did get a handful of tungsten Fresnels on Nocturne because there was a lot in the story with shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And so the quality of the shadow, like, not like light and dark shadows, but like a shadow on the wall of, you know, a figure or like a certain thing or a metronome or like certain symbols or foreshadowing or like different things that where shadows were very important. I was like, okay, the quality of the shadow, you know, I really need a Fresnel. And I did do a test with the Fresnel attachment on an aperture light and was quite happy with the shadow quality of the
a gigantic. You have a gigantic unit suddenly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was happy with the quality of it. We did a side by side test, but the size of it was unreasonable for a lot of the applications that we needed it for. So sometimes you just want an inky, you know, sometimes you just want a little small face Fresnel or, you know, not something that's attached to another thing. You just want to bring it in and, you know.
It's funny. I went through the exact same thing on my last movie where also it was a noir movie, a lot of shadows. And through the process of finding what creates the best shadow, yeah, we can create great shadows with the Fresnel attachment, and suddenly it's a small car. It's it's just super impractical. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they just I think I spoke about it last time, but this company Nanlux just came out with this 5,000 bicolor single source LED, but I was reading up on it yesterday or this morning. They worked the ballast into the head itself, so the entire unit is now like 110 pounds or something. And you're just like, oh, I mean, that's great if you're putting it outside a window or, you know, using it in replacement of like an M90, but that's it. You know, you're not bringing it inside.
Yeah, I mean, I remember people talking about that with the Roscoe Lion was like a 10K equivalent. I don't remember what the wattage was, but an LED, because it's like those are the last things that we haven't replaced LEDs with are the big lights, you know, 10Ks and 20Ks and 18Ks, or the little Fresnels, you know, like like unibody Fresnels, not like Fresnels that are attached to other things. And so, but more, there are other ways to skin the cat with the little Fresnels, but there's not other ways to skin the cat when you need a bank of 10Ks or whatnot. Yeah. So I'm happy that these are coming to market, even if they have trade-offs that are too big. You know, you still need a whole team to lift an 18K. Like an 18K is big and heavy and unwieldy. So I think, you know, there's a reason they hadn't made them yet is because of the trade-offs, and they didn't necessarily know that the market wanted those badly enough. They're going to be expensive and they're going to be heavy. And it's like, you know what? They're better than, you know, or I don't say they're better than, but you get the remote control ability, you know, back that you don't have with the 10K for now.
Just a question going back to the camera. When you finished the movie, when you did the DI, I'm in the C500. Is there anything that was worrisome? Anything that it was like, I can't reach the same things that I can reach with an Alexa, or it's just as good as it reacted?
Yes. I underexposed too much.
Okay.
I for in a way that did not serve me in the DI with the noise. So I got overly confident with the low light sensitivity, and so for example, if I've shot Alexa, Venice, whatever, and at a certain ISO, and I'm shooting in the dark, and then I shoot a dark scene on top of a low or high ISO, like I have a certain expectation of what that can handle, and that I took the C500 past its limits in for a few scenes in this regard in a way that I regret. So when I tested, I did do a little bit of testing, and I thought that my testing was sufficient, but I didn't have a DIT, and we're shooting in very dark sets with very low light levels, and like the monitors in the room, so your eyes are adjusted for a lot of darkness, and then you're looking at a monitor and you think that there's enough in there, but I don't, like I said, like, yeah, so in the monitors, whatever, 17 inches big, so the degree of noisiness, I went a little too far in underexposing it. So it's like, yes, you can use high ISOs, but if you're doing that, do not also underexpose.
Underexposed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did you end up compensating with some of the rest of the film to like add texture to mask the transition, or? Oh, right, yeah.
We needed to do some pretty hefty noise reduction when we were sort of like hitting our limits in noise reduction, and there were some scenes where I was shooting available light in an interior, so like the indirect window light was very beautiful in quality, but like let's say I started shooting and then it was late in the day, and then the light levels just started going down, so the rest of the scene might have been with a thick enough negative that noise wasn't becoming an issue, but then a couple of the shots within that scene were getting noisy. So then we would have to add some grain to smooth those. I mean, scene to scene, if you're like, oh, this is a dark scene, it's got some noise, like that doesn't necessarily bump when you watch it. You kind of like used to that. But if it's within the same scene and you cut to a certain angle of somebody and that has a noticeable texture to it that doesn't match the rest of the scene, that happened a couple of times because of my reliance on available light and light levels getting past a point where we probably shouldn't have still kept shooting.
Well, what's in your bucket list? I mean, you do everything in the in the cinematography world. What's left for you? What do you wanna? If you could choose, what will be your next project?
I would love to do more international series that are very visual and have resources, plenty of time, and where something I really loved about Emily in Paris was how much the entire creators, producers, etc. cared about the visual quality. Like it needed to be a certain level of pretty. So like you had time to light things, to a certain standard. It wasn't like East New York where it was just like, hurry up, it looks good enough to us, kind of. It was like, no, it needs to, everyone was on board, which is something I love about commercials, that everyone is on board with the visual excellence of it. So I would love to shoot a meaningful, I use Titanic as an example of something that's big and epic, but also has a lot of heart and human connection to it. Like I'm less interested in some blockbuster that's all style and no substance. And I mean, that would be fun to do. I'd be happy to just keep leveling up and in budgets and shoot like a big superhero movie or something. But in terms of like what my ultimate goal, would be, it would be, to shoot a studio movie with like a good like heart of a human story.
Sci-fi thriller. That's mine.
Yeah, I would love to do. I would love to do sci-fi, and I like thrillers. I like thrillers too. When I say Titanic, I'm not necessarily drawn to romances, but it's more just the, I want to connect and feel, something, and unfortunately that seems to be less common in bigger budget, stuff for some reason. I don't think it should be that way, but it's just that a lot of the bigger budget stuff has just become, selling toys like Transformers or something.
Yeah.
I also love action. Like that was one of my favorite things about East New York, and if you look at my website, like the clips that I've chosen to showcase, were mostly action scenes, that I was like, oh, maybe, before I booked Emily, I was like, oh, maybe where I want to go next, like maybe I'll try and get an action show. Maybe I'll get
one thing I forgot to ask earlier. So the transition from, Grip Electric World to DP, and then now, do you operate or do you work with operators on your shows?
On the TV shows, you work with operators. Absolutely. It's completely inefficient to operate. Like you have way too much going on at all times, and you need good operators who are taking that aspect to things on themselves as important collaborators, in the process. For Nocturne, I operated myself because the movie was so tiny. It wasn't like, oh, we've got X amount of money to spend, like let's, hire an extra person. Like if I could have hired an extra person, I would have had another electrician, more, be in order to, in terms of the impact on the functioning of the day and how much I could get done with more people. So yeah, it depends on the project, and what makes sense for the project, but I definitely thrive in having other people operate, especially if it's two cameras, which so many things are nowadays. Like to be operating one camera and paying attention to what the second camera is doing and paying attention to the big picture of coverage when you didn't even see what the other person got. And if you're doing a camera, which is more often the master of the wide shot, and they're getting a tighter shot, the tighter shot is where I'm going to care more about the nuance of the lighting. So I probably want to be seeing that one. Mm-hmm. And so it's operating when you're doing two cameras doesn't make sense to me, but also, there's so much to being a DP that's like big picture thinking that you can't do if you're operating. Like if you're operating, your job, your focus, whatever, needs to be on being present. You're being present with that actor's body language and movements and the pace of the dolly move, and like all, like it's all presence. And you can't, if you're thinking about, like, oh, we need to cut a shot, and is this cut with this, and what do I need to tell the gaffer to start leapfrogging ahead for the next setup, and like, oh, tomorrow's text, like if you're thinking about any of that while you're operating, your operating is gonna suffer. So you have to sort of put those things out of your mind while you're operating, which means shifting from management to doing, to management to doing. And then like a lot of the management aspect of like moving everything else forward is put on pause while you're rolling or rehearsing, which means that those things are not being moved forward and you're not available for communication. Like the amount of communication happening at all times, like to remove yourself from that, to be operating is like, I don't think in the DP's best interest or in the project's best interest to have the DP doing that.
Do you have any interest on directing?
Not Not really. No, I have no passion for it. I've done it a couple times when I've been handed an opportunity that made sense, where it was like a director DP situation and it was not a project that I needed to like launch and pitch and sell, kind of thing. But I much rather, come in, have my contribution be done and move on to the next thing than, the life of a director, especially, a feature director of like very often either writing or adapting, a script to your liking with notes, and then, between editing and now distribution has become a big DIY. Like there's no movie or story that I want to be completely absorbed and have take over my life for that many years as it takes to be a feature director. I could see myself being directing commercials if someone, if I wasn't having to pitch all the time, if it was just like, okay, this has a budget, it has a date, it's happening, it has a infrastructure for follow through on the post. You just need to like show up and, do the directing part as opposed to all of the others.
Yeah.
That part I can get on board with, but it doesn't interest me enough.
A friend of mine says that a director friend of mine says that going to set, he does it for free. He gets paid for all the rest.
Yes.
So
it's all the rest part that does not interest me, and the going to set part as a director doesn't pay off enough for me to care about putting myself through that all the other stuff. Whereas being a DP, I do care enough about it to put myself through all the other stuff, to put myself through the navigation of a freelance career and the solopreneur business and the self-promotion and the networking and the staying relevant and like all of that work that it takes to build a career. It's like, that is worth it to me in order to get to work as a DP. Whereas all that other stuff is not worth it to me to get to work as a director. I don't care enough about directing.
We have a great job. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
well, thank you so much. It's been a fantastic chat. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your points of view on this business with us. And I hope you enjoyed it too.
I sure did. It's been great to talk to you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jendra.
Thanks.